Anki is a free piece of software that takes advantage of active recall and spaced repetition for long-term learning. It's pretty much just flashcards, but Anki will show you more difficult cards sooner and more often and easier cards less often. So it will do all of your flashcard scheduling for you. The first thing you want to do is download and install it since it's software. I'll leave a link to download Anki in the description. Next, you want to create an AnkiWeb account. Anki automatically saves your progress locally on each device. But if you have multiple devices you want to use for Anki, you have to press a sync button every time you switch devices, or your other devices won't know where you are in terms of progress. I use Anki on my home computer, a laptop, and my phone, so I have to really make sure I'm syncing often. But even if you only have one device, it's good to create an account and sync often, just in case you lose access to your computer and you have to log in on a new device. Once you have Anki downloaded, you have to get some cards to study. Cards are lumped into organizational structures called decks. Anki has a lot of pre-made decks just on the internet, and you can find them on Reddit or AnkiWeb. Just like when you download anything from the internet, just make sure you know what you're downloading and it's from a source that you trust. All you have to do is download the deck, click Import File on Anki to add it. If you're using Anki on multiple devices, you only have to add cards on one device. Syncing will update all your other devices to be exactly the same. For example, if I add this Anki deck to my computer, and then I sync it on my computer, and then sync on my phone, then I can use those same cards on my phone. If you're in medical school or you're pre-med and you're using Anki for the MCAT, you've probably heard of Anking. It's essentially a huge set of flashcards made by other people specifically for preparing you for the STEP exams. It's about $6 a month, not sponsored. I'm not a huge fan of paying for a service, especially a subscription, for an otherwise free service like Anki, since it definitely contributes to the pay-to-win reputation that medical school has, but it's very difficult to beat this level of value and quality in terms of studying materials. For example, there are a lot of images made just for the STEP decks that are really helpful for understanding the material a little bit better, and there are often explanations to answers in the cards. You can imagine that all the flashcards in the Anking deck have some sort of relevancy to the STEP exams, with some cards being more relevant or high yield, and some cards being less relevant or low yield. It costs about $6 per month to get access to the cards and the updates they push to the cards, and they do have a higher subscription tier called AnkiHub Premium that gives you access to an AI, Boards and Beyond, and First Aid Forward, but it's definitely not necessary, and I personally only have the basic version and it works great. I would recommend you buy the basic tier of AnkiHub just to start with, and if you find yourself really itching for that extra feature set, you can definitely give it a shot. If anyone's tried it, please let everyone know if it's worth it in the comments. Anking does have a page on scholarships. I personally haven't used it, so I don't know how difficult it is to use the scholarship, but the option does exist. The current version of the STEP deck is version 12. There is a way to download version 11 of the Anking deck that's free, and I'll link it in the description. It's to a Reddit post. But version 11 is no longer updated, and the only way to get updates is to purchase the AnkiHub subscription and use the version 12 deck. Due to the nature of medicine, things are changing all the time, so it's possible that when you're studying version 11, even though the cards were accurate at the time, they haven't kept pace with changes in, for example, microbe family classifications or the up-to-date new medications for certain pathologies. The Anking deck, which is the one with the subscription, is consistently updated to reflect changes. These are just a few of the examples of cards where the information has been changed or updated. Keep in mind that you can use version 11, the free version, essentially as a free trial, and then when you want to, you can subscribe to the AnkiHub add-on later, and your progress with your cards should be saved, so you don't have to start completely over. Just make sure that when you hit sync for the first time after you subscribe to the AnkiHub add-on, you click upload to AnkiWeb. Anking also has references to resources like Sketchy and Bootcamp that are pretty helpful if you get a card you don't know and you want to watch a video on it, so you know which video you're supposed to watch or which third-party resource you have to consult. If you do decide you want to use Anking for medical school, go to ankihub.net, create an account, and purchase a subscription. Don't get AnkiHub confused with AnkiWeb. AnkiHub is the paid hub where you're paying a monthly subscription for Anki decks that are being maintained and updated. AnkiWeb is where you created an account to sync your cards. On the Explore page of AnkiHub, you want to click subscribe on any decks you want to use. For me, since I have in-house exams and not step-based exams, I subscribe to my school deck and the Anking step deck. Buying the monthly AnkiHub subscription gives you access to all the decks on AnkiHub, so you don't have to pay individually for any additional decks you want to use. You just pay for the subscription. Then you want to add the AnkiHub add-on to Anki. You want to go to Tools, Add-ons, Get Add-ons, and put this number into the box, and press OK. After you restart your Anki, at the top you'll see a new AnkiHub dropdown. You want to click Sync with AnkiHub, and it should download the decks you subscribe to onto your computer. Just make sure you press the regular sync button as well, so you're saving your progress. Again, you only have to add decks to one device and sync on the device you added it to. In my case, my computer, and then you sync on your other devices. The first time you do this, syncing will take a long time since you downloaded all the cards and all the pictures, so just be prepared. I think it is a couple gigs, so if you're running low on space, you'll have to clear a little bit of space up. Once it's done syncing, you want to go to Browse on Anki, go to the AnkiHub tab. You want to select all of the cards with Control or Command A, and you want to suspend all of them with Control or Command J. You can also right-click to suspend or unsuspend cards. Suspended cards will not show up when you're studying. We want to suspend all the cards for now and then unsuspend the cards that are relevant to what you're learning in school and what you're going to be tested on. This is how you're going to be organizing your studying, by figuring out what's relevant, unsuspending those relevant cards, and then doing those cards. The Anking step deck is pretty comprehensive, but when you do get to your anatomy block, you want to use a different deck in conjunction with the Anking step deck. A lot of people really like the University of Michigan Blue Link Atlas deck, which is on AnkiHub, since it has actual pieces of anatomical structures on donors. I personally use Comprehensive Cadaver, which you'll have to download and import to Anki since it's not part of the AnkiHub add-on. I'll put the link to that in the description, but they are very similar. These cards are pure anatomy, meaning you'll just be identifying the structures themselves, their innervations, origins, and insertions. So you'll need to pair them with something like the St. Matthew's University School of Medicine 100 Concepts flashcards, which will teach you important concepts related to the anatomy, which will be covered on the step exams, but to my knowledge are not included in the Anking step decks. I highly do not recommend making your own flashcards for all of the content you'll be learning. You want to use a pre-made deck like the Anking deck, and then only make the cards the pre-made deck doesn't cover specific to your school curriculum. This is why I have a school-specific deck, which covers the information that only my school wants us to know, and even then, it's not me making all of those cards. The school deck is a community project led by a couple of my really hardworking classmates. You will spend so much time making flashcards if you're making flashcards for all of the content. There's no guarantee that the flashcards you make are going to effectively test your knowledge. I recommend checking out this website, which details how to make a good Anki card if you do decide to go that route, but I personally wouldn't recommend it. You might be thinking that making cards might be a good way to study, but formatting the cards and the physical process of making the cards and making them well takes a ton of time, which you could be using on more important things like hobbies or extracurriculars. You will also want to organize your cards, and in my opinion, tagging is the best way to do that, and that will take up even more time. For making supplemental cards, you want to click on Create Deck at the bottom if you want it all organized in a new deck, and then click Add. If you want to add to a pre-existing deck, just open the deck and click Add at the top. Any cards you add will not show up on anyone else's computer, so this is all going to be just for you. Any cards that I make personally, I add to my school-specific deck. I'd recommend just putting it in a new deck, so any changes they put out towards the Anking step deck doesn't mess up any of the cards you make or any of the notes you've taken on the Anking cards themselves. There are three main types of flashcards people typically use. You have the basic flashcard, which is your stock standard flashcards with the front and the back. You have a closed deletion, which is essentially just hiding a part of a sentence that you reveal later on. And then you have image occlusion, which will hide parts of a picture with a box. Image occlusion requires its own add-on, so as to install it, you just do the same thing as the AnkiHub add-on. Click Tools at the top, Add-ons, Get Add-ons, paste this number in, press OK, and restart Anki. To make a basic card, just change the type to basic and type something in the front and the back boxes. Click Add, or you can press Control or Command Enter, and it will add the card to your deck. Hovering over any of the buttons here will show you the hotkey, like Control Enter for adding cards. To make a close card, change the type to close and put text into the text box. Highlight the text you want to hide, and at the top right you'll see brackets with ellipses in them. Clicking the right button will make all the text on the card reveal at the same time. Clicking the left button will make multiple cards, so that you can study different parts of a sentence on separate cards. You can tell which cards are going to be revealed at the same time by the number next to the close deletion. In this example, the word close and deletion will be revealed in one singular card, and the word sentence and reveal will be revealed in a different card. Notice that this card has numbers going up to 2. That means that out of this one piece of text, you're making 2 cards. You can also give yourself hints by doing a double colon and then putting the hint afterwards. Anything you put into the back extra box will reveal itself when you reveal the card. There are lots of things you can do with close deletions, and I would recommend checking out the Anki manual for more information. It has a ton of helpful information and tricks that you can use to make your cards just that much better. For Image Occlusion Enhanced, it's a little bit more complicated, and you should go to the Image Occlusion Enhanced wiki to learn a little bit more. I'll link it in the description. Inside the wiki are videos and kind of textural tutorials that describe how this add-on works way better than I could. Once you have decks, you want to change the settings for the decks a little bit. To open settings for the cards, you want to hover over the deck and then click this little button to the right of your deck and click Options. You'll notice that the names of the cards in the Anking deck card types are called AnkiHub. You want to set the daily limit to 9,999. You want to set learning steps for new cards and lapses. I personally set to 5 minutes. You just type 5M into the box. This changes the amount of time it takes for Anki to show you a card again when you press again or hard. At the bottom, you want to switch FSRS to on if it's not already on. FSRS is essentially an improved algorithm over the previous system that decides when Anki will show you the cards. Newer Anki versions may already have FSRS on by default. There are a bunch of videos by Anking and other people that show you how to optimize your settings kind of to the max, but these settings work really well for me, so I'm going to keep using these. Now there are mobile apps for Anki. The Anki app on Android is free, and the Anki app on iOS is called Anki Mobile Flashcards, and it is $25. That is a lot of money to be spending on a phone flashcard app. I personally don't think it's worth it unless you're doing a lot of flashcards every day on your phone, or you don't have access to a computer all the time. But I do think this is one of the only ways you can directly support the Anki devs since the computer software is free. I personally have the iOS app, and I mostly use it whenever I'm on the treadmill or in the gym, or whether you're on the bus or you're the passenger in a car. It really comes in pretty handy to get a couple cards in whenever you can, but it's definitely not necessary. When you're in medical school and you look around at your classmates doing Anki, you'll notice that a lot of them have controllers. Using a controller is totally optional, but when you do need to sit down and do Anki for a few hours, having a small, dedicated handheld controller gives you a sense of freedom and comfort that you can really only understand if you've done thousands and thousands of cards on a computer, and then you get a controller and you can move around your hands and you don't have to sit down right next to your computer all the time. I'll put a link to the controller that I use in the description, not an affiliate link. And this controller is compatible with both Mac and PC. I use it for both, and it charges with USB-C, which is really nice. The Anking website has instructions on how to connect the controller to your computer. I'll link it in the description. But essentially, you just install the Contanki add-on with this code, slide the switch at the top of the controller to D, and then hold the pair button at the top. On your computer, you want to open Bluetooth settings and connect your 8-bit micro gamepad. Pressing the heart button will turn the controller on, and when the controller's already on, holding the heart button will turn it off. It should show automatically with the indicator light. It should automatically connect to your computer every time you turn it on, but if you have multiple computers or multiple devices, all you have to do is hold the pair button and find the controller in your Bluetooth devices list and connect it. Next, you want to set your keybinds. go to the link I have in the description to a set of keybinds that Anking has made and download the mappings. Then you want to go to your Anki, go to Tools, Addons, Contanki, and Config. You can click import and then select the file you just downloaded. I like to set my scroll speed at 15, and you want to change the left and right D-pad to scroll vertical and then check the box that says invert. This is because you'll be holding your remote like this. Check overlay always on until you get used to which buttons correspond to which buttons on Anki, and then you can turn it off later because I think it's kind of ugly. And then in the custom actions box, you want to click add, name it reveal next as the custom action, and you want to put N as the shortcut. At the top, click controls, click answer at the bottom, and for the bottom D-pad, set the drop down to reveal next, the custom action that you just made. For some Anking cards that have multiple fields, you can now just press the down D-pad button and it'll reveal it instead of having to click the reveal next button or pressing the N key on your keyboard. This should set up your remote in a way that you can do all of your Anki cards without having to touch your keyboard or your mouse or your computer at all, which really adds to the smoothness of your workflow. I'm not joking when I say this lets me do probably hundreds more cards per day than I would be able to do otherwise. I recently learned that the controller is also compatible with iOS and Android, and I actually bought another one that's paired only with my iPad, so I can run or walk on the treadmill with it and not have to worry about changing the pairing options on my existing remote. The instructions to pair to an iOS device are on the Anking website as well, and even though the Anki app on iOS has native controller support, I had some problems getting my controller to connect reliably, so I just used the software that comes with the app. Here are my key bindings, which are matched to the ones I use on my computer. Installing an add-on on one computer will not automatically install it on all your other devices, even if you press sync. You have to add them manually to each computer. So here are all the add-ons I recommend starting out with in one section, so you can look back on it later. AnkiHub is the add-on for Anking, which lets you update all of your Anking decks, like the Anking step deck, or in my case, my school-specific deck is updated with new cards every time we have to learn new material. The Contanki add-on lets you modify your controller settings. Image Occlusion Enhance lets you use pictures as cards, and these are really helpful for things that you can't use words to describe. Review Heatmap gives you a nice little colored graphic on the home screen that shows how many cards you've done per day. Filter Deck from Tags lets you create a filtered deck by right-clicking a tag and clicking Create Filtered Deck. I'll put a link to the filtered deck section on the Anki manual in the description, but essentially it temporarily pulls all the cards with a certain tag from the main deck and puts it in a new temporary deck. I say temporary because when you're done studying those specific cards, just click the button next to the deck, press delete, and it'll return all of those cards back to your main deck. It won't actually delete them. Custom background image and gear icon lets you upload a picture to set as the background of your Anki, which makes doing Anki much less sad in my personal opinion. For the Anking cards, there are lots of images and references to third-party resources that help a ton in memorizing little facts and details, especially for resources like Sketchy or Pixorize. They will appear if you click the respective button, but you want them to appear automatically. To do this, click Browse, click on any Anking card, and then click Cards at the top right. Click Back Template, and look for the Show Hints Automatically section. I like to change Lecture Notes, Sketchy, Sketchy 2, Sketchy Extra, Pixorize, and Bootcamp to True. At this point, you can also turn text-to-speech on by changing the text-to-speech options to this on the front template and this on the back template. I'll link the text in the description. But I find that text-to-speech sometimes gets in the way of the way I think, and it only does more harm than good for me. But it's definitely an option if you'd like to close your eyes. There's an Anking video I'll link in the description that will help you understand the text-to-speech option a little bit better with access to different voices, so you can find the one that works the best for you. Click Save at the bottom right and the third-party resources should show up auto-magically. Which cards do I study? Anking has a lot of cards. It has upwards of 60,000 cards. And the hardest part about doing Anki as your primary study method is figuring out which cards you should unsuspend and study. I think the best way to imagine this is a Venn diagram where you have the stuff your school wants you to know specifically in one circle and the stuff USMLE wants you to know for the STEP exams in the other circle, there is a significant amount of overlap. So if your school is pass-fail, then you can typically get away with just doing the Anking deck, making a few cards for what you feel like is high yield for your specific school, and taking an L on everything else. Residency programs will only know that you passed, and they won't know what actual numerical grade you got. This lets you grind a little bit harder for the content on the STEP exams instead of spending more time on your school-specific content. And this is especially important if the specialty you're interested in values a really high STEP score over everything else. But if your school is graded, that is tough. You want to spend your time studying, prepping for the STEP exam, but you also want to get pretty high grades in class. So you'll have to spend comparatively a little bit more time studying your school-specific content. That means you'll either have to band together with your classmates and have your own AnkiHub deck, or you'll have to make all these extra cards yourself. Remember that we suspended all the cards we downloaded, meaning that any cards you want to study, you just have to unsuspend them. For step 1 alone, you're looking at about 32,000 cards. So how do you figure out which ones you have to study? If you're lucky like me and you stand on the shoulders of giants, students before you will have tag cards based on your in-house lectures. Just be wary that lectures change from year to year, so if you don't have someone diligently working on tagging cards every year, these may not be completely accurate. I've said tags a couple of times in this video, and all tags are is a little piece of text that lets you organize cards together. It's pretty powerful, especially since you can put multiple tags per card, which is really important because a lot of concepts cover multiple disciplines. If we take a look at this card, we can see all the different disciplines it covers, and we can also see what kind of yield it is, whether it's high yield, meaning it's something that's tested more often, or low yield, which is something that's tested on less often. Anking is tagged by third-party resources. That means you can watch a video from a third party, for example, Bootcamp, and then you can open the Anki browser, find the corresponding video that you just watched, and someone will have already organized all the cards that are relevant to that video in one neat group. All you have to do is select it all, unsuspend them, and do them. Now, there are a lot of third-party resources, and they're all really expensive. I personally like Bootcamp. That one is a couple $100s a year, which is really expensive, especially when you're a medical student. And you have to remember that not all third-party resources are tagged by Anking. So if you are planning on using Anking as your primary study strategy, you want to make sure that the third-party resource that you subscribe to is one of the ones that someone has tagged for. You can generalize third-party resources into kind of two categories. You have your conceptual resources and you have your mnemonic resources. For content and conceptual third-party resources, for my school, Boards and Beyond, which is also known as BNB, and Bootcamp have aligned the closest to my curriculum, and I do think they do a great job of covering what is going to be high yield on the STEP exams. They're really good at explaining what's important and how things work. I think the cards in the Anking deck align a little bit more closely to the Bootcamp content, so that after you watch a video, the cards will be more directly relevant to the video. Whereas with Boards and Beyond, often there are cards with information in them that was not covered by the video, and those you just have to raw dog, and it sucks. You also have resources like Pathoma. Chapters 1 to 3 are some of the highest yield pieces of information you can learn for STEP. I personally like using Bootcamp, and I've been really satisfied with the content they produce, and I've been especially satisfied with how closely the tags align with the content in the videos. For mnemonic third-party resources, you have Sketchy and Pixorize. They essentially create visual mnemonics to help you memorize tons of things at the same time. It's good to note that this is a little bit different from BNB and Bootcamp. While Sketchy and Pixorize will help you memorize details, I find that they don't really help with conceptual understanding. So really the best thing you can do is watch a Bootcamp video or a Boards and Beyond video, and then watching Sketchy or Pixorize videos afterwards to help you really lock in the information. For biochemistry, in my experience, Pixorize has been the best for mnemonics. Think of things like memorizing the Krebs cycle with all its substrates, products, cofactors, and enzymes. For microbes and antimicrobials, I think you can ask pretty much any med student and they would tell you that the gold standard is Sketchy Micro and Sketchy Farm. This is for when you need to memorize dozens of facts about dozens of microbes or dozens of antimicrobials. I know what you're thinking. I'm gonna have to pay thousands of dollars every year for Sketchy, Pixorize, Bootcamp, Boards and Beyond. Pathoma, and all these other third-party resources. Paying for more things in medical school like third-party resources sucks. You'll just have to learn how to be resourceful. I'd recommend asking your classmates about third-party resources and maybe see if they'd be willing to share their accounts, or maybe getting an account with a friend. Some schools pay for third-party resources like Sketchy, so maybe you can ask your administration, but to be honest, that probably will just get tacked onto your technology fee and be added to your tuition, so your mileage may vary. Some third-party resources also offer discounts for group buys, but in my experience, you need a lot of people to do this, like dozens or maybe 100 people. There are a lot of free resources like Ninja Nerd and Dirty Medicine on YouTube, but the Anking deck doesn't have tags for these. This means that no one has looked for the cards related to a Ninja Nerd video and tagged them, so you would have to search for them yourself. This is one advantage the paid third-party resources have. People have already tagged relevant cards, so you don't have to go out and search for them yourself, which takes a ton of time. And in a deck with thousands of cards, it's going to be hard to filter in the relevant cards and filter out the irrelevant ones to the content you're watching. I'd recommend these just as supplementary material, and I wouldn't base all of your studying on them. I'm going to link a video in the description. It's just an example of what it looks like when I study. Once you have everything set up, it just boils down to a few steps you do every day. The first thing you want to do is do your review cards. You can go into your settings and choose whether your review cards show up before your new cards or after your new cards, but I like doing them before my new cards. 2, you want to watch your in-house lecture or a third-party lecture. I cannot stress this enough. You cannot just spam cards and learn well by doing just Anki without watching reference material first. The reference material will give you a big picture overview and help you connect concepts together, while Anki will help you memorize each individual detail of each concept. It's tough to make connections between concepts when a well-made Anki card will only show you one concept at a time. I know this because I've tried it. The first 3 medical school blocks, I only went to red card classes, didn't watch any lectures, and just raw dogged the Anki cards. It was lonely, it was mentally exhausting, and it actually took way longer to do all the cards by themselves than it takes to watch a 10-minute video and then doing the corresponding cards. Also, since I didn't have a very good overview of the material, my test taking was not very good. Raw dogging cards might carry you through medical school if your medical school is pass-fail, but I don't think you'll get a really good grasp of overarching concepts very well, which is really important for the USMLE STEP exams. My understanding is that the STEP exams really try and test your understanding and application of information, not just whether you know which antibiotics are good for which bacteria. 3, you want to unsuspend the cards based on what you watched. This should be pretty easy since the Anking deck is tagged very well based on third-party resources. 4, you want to open the deck and do your new cards. You want to press again if you don't know the answer or you got it wrong, even if you feel like you almost had it. When you do know the answer, you want to press good, hard, or easy. Which button you press directly impacts when Anki will show you the card again, so it's important to be truthful to yourself. If the card is a give me, like which metal is in heme, it's iron, press easy. If it takes you a second to think of the answer, press good. If you have to really think, press hard. Remember, you have to get the card correct to press hard, good, or easy. Which button you press just changes based on how easy you think that card is. If you don't get it right, even if you get it a little bit wrong, you want to press again. Most of the time, like 95% of the time, you'll be pressing either good or again. You also want to use the mouse as infrequently as possible since this kind of ruins your momentum. This is why the remote is so effective and why we had third-party resources automatically open. On that vein, for the cards with multiple answers, you can press N to reveal next instead of clicking the reveal next button. You might think I'm just splitting hairs at this point, but I'm being completely serious. Any small optimizations you make on studying each card will save you tons of time every week, possibly hours every week. And when you're in medical school, every hour matters. I've heard a rule of thumb that doing 100 new cards each day will pace you pretty well to take the STEP exams. Also, it can be tempting, say after your GI block, to suspend all of your GI cards since your school won't be testing you on them anymore. But I think the whole point of Anki is longitudinal learning. Keeping all the cards you've learned unsuspended and letting Anki decide when to show them to you will save you time in the long run. So when you're in your dedicated STEP studying block, you don't have to relearn so many things. Also, Anki is about doing your cards every day. It's definitely okay if some days you feel like you really can't do your cards, and that's totally fine. But your reviews will definitely back up a little bit and you'll just have to do a little bit more tomorrow. So you want to really try and keep up with your Anki cards. Anki is really hard to use in the beginning since using it is new to you, the UI isn't very user-friendly, and when you start medical school, content is so much harder to learn because medicine is interdisciplinary and you just don't know that much yet. Just hang in there and know that things get better. This video shows you pretty much everything that I do in terms of Anki, and there are still tons of optimizations that you can do to squeeze out a little bit more efficiency, but that is definitely out of the scope of this video. Once you actually get into the groove of things, it's pretty manageable. It's actually a pretty good feeling that every day all you have to do is watching some videos, going to lecture, and doing some flashcards. Even so, Anki can feel very overwhelming, especially when you're just getting started. So please leave questions or clarifications in the comments, and I'll try and answer as many as I can or redirect you to a better resource. I'm gonna put the script to this video in the description, so if you'd rather read the script rather than watching the video or Control or Command F to find something, it'll be a little bit easier. Thanks for listening.